look, I gotta be real 24/7, even if it makes me look like a little unprofessional. But like in my defense, Windows updates are bullshit. And even if you tell Windows that you don't want them, Windows eventually decides that like they're just gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It is true. You only get to say no for so long. It's like the IRS, really. You only get to say I'll do it later for so long before they garnish your wages and take your house. Hey everybody, welcome back for the second part of our discussion with Parker and Amanda joining us for our Pride episode right here on Checkpoint AFK. So we spent, the first part of our episode talking about our personal stories and giving some advice to those people out there who might be in the closet. And now I wanted to take a look at gaming, because at the end of the day, what is the common thread amongst all of us is that we're all gamers. We all enjoy gaming. If you listen to this show, you probably enjoy gaming in some fashion as well, too. So what I wanted to do is take a minute to talk about representation in gaming, because so often the phrase representation in gaming is really quickly just met with keep your politics out of my games. And, which is a ridiculous thing to say, first of all, because here's the sad truth is that video games are art, and all artistic expression has politics in it, whether you like it or not, because choosing to be silent is a political stance, whether you like it or not.
Can I make a comment, too, that we're also doing this on the day that not Left 4 Dead, Last of Us 2
drops.
comes out.
Yes.
Or drops.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting point.
comment.
I know. I'm sure we'll be hearing keep your politics out of my games for Last of Us 2 all week long, although we've been hearing that since the leaks. So, what are you going to do? So, Parker and Amanda, I wanted to get your thoughts on representation in gaming and kind of where it is today versus where it was, say, in the mid-90s when we were all, or maybe the late 90s, early 2000s when we were all getting into gaming. What do you think?
Yeah.
I feel like there's... just thinking back, I'm trying to think of any games that I played when I was a kid that educated me about anything besides like the pure fact of gaming. Like outside of just LGBT representation, I can't think of a single game that I played that had any kind of relation in that way. And I think about now, I think about my nieces and nephews. They're all gamers. They all play games, and the fact that they're able to be exposed to anything LGBTQ plus representation in games at their young age, 6, maybe I think my youngest nephew is 6, and I think that's wonderful. Like, the fact that I wish I would have known or been able to relate to any gay character in any game that I played when I was 6. I think that would have been great, because suddenly that would have made me feel more comfortable with playing that game and feeling like, oh, there's something about this character that relates to me in this deep, dark way, or not deep, dark way, but back then I probably would have thought that. I think my nieces and nephews being exposed to that now is something that's so important, because it just goes along with kind of what we were talking about during the break with educating and looking forward to the future and seeing the education happening so early on for these kids that are playing these games. I couldn't be more happy that it's happening, to be honest. I know some people will say it's like a cop-out for game companies to get more exposure on their games and things like that. And I think to an extent, maybe that is true on some cases. But regardless, I still think it's a good thing to an extent as well. So it's hard for me to bash it. It's hard for me to say that it's dumb of this company to think about this certain character all of a sudden after 10 years saying, oh, this character's lesbian, this character is gay. Yeah, there's something weird about that, but at the same time, I can't be mad about it.
Well,
like, I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think it's important, too, because as weird as it sounds to say, exploitation is frequently one of the first steps towards normalization. You know, you think about the blaxploitation films of the 60s and 70s, and we haven't, like, you think about games throughout the 90s, right? They appealed to the masculine male kind of, you know, thing. That's what you wanted to be. And then as we got into 2000s and graphics started to come along a little bit, we started getting the exploitation of women in gaming, which was rampant throughout the 2000s and still remains rampant. And then even a little bit of I would even say a little bit of sexploitation, a little bit too. Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot bit more sexualization in games, just in general.
So when companies put a LGBTQ character in, and it feels a little exploitive, it's because it is a little exploitive. That said, frequently exploitation is the first step towards normalization. That you need to have. It's always going to be a novelty before it's a standard, right? And as unfortunate of a truth as that is. And I mean, Amanda, you and I are in the trans community. Frankly, we're still waiting on a trans main character that doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out. I'm looking at you, BioWare, Hanley Abrams. That was a rough release.
So I mean, like, I have a lot of, like, you know, we were talking about while we were, you know, off the air, right, about intersectionality. So, like, you know, while trans is part of my identity, to sort of talk about something that you asked initially of me and Parker, of, like, you know, what do we think of games you know, back when we were first becoming gamers? So in my case, you know, the early 90s, like, you know, 1992, 93, you have to remember that for Black people, their representation wasn't a thing, right?
Or it was bad. Like, it was really bad representation.
Or it was really bad, or, like, just like in general, like, I'm thinking about it, it was really important for me that there was a Black Power Ranger, right? It was really important for me that Static Shock was a show. It was really
I love Static Shock.
That when they started doing the Justice League cartoon, that they used
Jon Stewart.
They used Jon Stewart instead of either Kyle Rayner or Hal Jordan. So, like, when you grow up that way, and I've talked about this a lot on my Twitter over the years, when you grow up taking the scraps that you get, you also just accept that this other video game you're playing doesn't have Black people, right? You know, There's a joke in the African-American community about the reason we all like Piccolo, right? It's because, well, he was the only not white person on the screen, right? There's a reason why a lot of Black people like anime, and it's because it's the same reason why a lot of Black people liked the Kung Fu movies of the, you know, the 60s and the 70s. It's a lot of these shows that made it to America are about these underprivileged people rising up and gaining power and being able to use that power and, like, achieve some form of greatness. Whether it's Kenshiro in Fist of the North Star, or whether, you know, it's Goku constantly being the last of his kind and always triumphing over the bad guys. And so you kind of, in a sense, as a Black person, sort of make peace with, like, what a minority is, right? And you sort of just kind of accept whatever minority representation you get. So to that first point of, like, what do I think? It's like, well, representation wasn't a thought in my head as a young kid because I was so used to not seeing Black people, right?
Yep.
Even on a show like Static Shock, someone who shared an equal amount of screen time was his friend Jimmy, who was white.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Oh,
so
Richie.
Like,
yep.
Ricky, and they gave him superpowers in the second season.
Yep.
So that he could be on the screen even more. And, like, that's so, like, I know I'm not necessarily talking about gaming, but it's like, I didn't grow up thinking that Black representation was a thing in the culture that I was really a part of, which was being a nerd, being into video games, being into comics, being into anime, being into manga. I was extremely not used to seeing myself in any shape or form, Black or trans or of mixed descent, that it just stopped being a thing I thought about. Right? Like, one of my favorite esports titles to play is League of Legends, and there are maybe, like, 7 Black characters, and some of them are, like, racially ambiguous, and, like, we take those as W's.
Right, you've got, like, Lucian, and then it's like, okay, do I count Thresh? Like,
Senna?
Yeah, Senna.
Senna's Black. And, like, you know, a lot of people are wondering is Master Yi Black, because, like, you don't see his skin tone, and he's got kind of, like, a deeper voice. And so, like, as a Black person, you look for all of these things from these ambiguous characters to, like, be like I said, it's the Piccolo thing, right? He's not white, So like,
the
I guess
closest thing I got.
right? Because we definitely don't want Mr. Popo. So
No.
like,
Oh, I didn't even think of Mr. Popo.
Problematic, to say the least.
there's a reason why they made Mr. Popo blue. But like
Ooh.
those are the issues, right? Like for someone like me, like forget my transness, right? Which you kind of can't do with intersectionality. But like if you look at like a core part of my identity growing up of being Black, I just didn't expect to ever see myself in the things I wanted to be a part of, right? There was one Black X-Men, right? For me growing up, Storm.
Oh,
There was no Black members of the Justice League that were like standout characters, right? There was no Black characters in the anime I watched. There was no Black characters in the manga I read.
And even when they did have a Black Justice League, like it was the Green Lantern, which could be white whenever they wanted him to be white. You know what I mean? Like,
so,
or her, or I guess whatever.
Yeah. For me, just like representation is always this really trite thing where it's cool that it's gotten better, but like comparatively, you know, even if you're a white queer person, you still see white people, right?
Yeah.
There's never a time where as a white person you're going to turn on a video game and not see someone who is also white.
Yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that's the case, but yeah, we'll see.
But like, versus somebody like me, how many times am I going to see a racially ambiguous character? Right?
That's fair.
Like, how often am I going to? How many games do you think I turn on where I don't see someone who looks remotely like me?
Correct. I mean, 99.99% of the time.
Representation is kind of this bullshit topic for me because, like, sure, we could be like, well, oh, there's not enough LGBT representation. We're like, still at the base, at the end of the day, you still see people that look like you. They may not identify like you, but they do look like you and the people that you know and the people that you associate with. And so, like,
that's fair.
I think there's one thing to say, and of course this all goes down to background. Obviously my background is extremely different than yours, but like to be able to look at my, like I was saying about my nieces and nephews that are in a very strict Mormon family, but still play video games, are still exposing themselves, still exposing themselves to some kind of culture outside of their own. The fact that there is representation is really big, in my opinion. I think it's very good that that exists. And it, not necessarily that it affects me personally, but looking outward on some people that I know that it might be a positive thing for, it makes me happy that it exists. But at the same time, I definitely completely see what Amanda is saying. So it's hard to find a good middle ground.
Well, I mean, for sure, right? Like, at the end of the day, we all have to step back and realize it's kind of like what I was talking about with recognizing, you know, privilege. You know, even as a trans person, as a white trans person, I have a way easier time than I would as a trans person of color. And for me, the only reason that I can look at, you know, video games and say, I really wish I could see some more transgender representation in it, is I think back to when I was in high school and had zero concept of what a trans person was and the bad times in my life that led to. If I could have had something there, you know, I say it all the time, a show like Steven Universe, if that show had existed when I was 12, how different my life might be today. Like, because if that show had existed when I was 12, I probably start transitioning at 14 or 15 rather than
that show is incredible.
Exactly. Rather than going through years of depression, suicidal tendencies, and finally getting to where I am now. I would have been there at 14 or 15. So I think there is a need for representation of all matters. Like, our video games need to look like the real world, and which is a weird thing to say about video games, which are clearly a fantasy, but like, but they do. They need to represent the people who live in this world, and that's not always white cis het male. You know, like it's that. It's just not.
I want to bring up the communities too in gaming. Like me and Parker like are very heavy into the Dead by Daylight community, and to their credit, they're as inclusive as I think most companies have gotten Behavior Interactive, especially with their character designs and they're adding every time. I think I'm trying to remember what Zarina is. Do you remember off the top of your head what ethnicity she is? I'm pretty sure she's Egyptian or something. But anyways, they're expanding out the other than just like the white black kind of thing. Because like, yeah, they have white characters. Yes, they have black characters, but they also have Japanese characters, and they're bringing in even like the killers who are a part of Japanese culture and things like that. So it's like very cool that they're bringing these kind of cultures into this one thing, and like all gamers can expand, because I learned so much about like the Oni and things like that just because I was interested in that killer. And I was like, all right, that's kind of fun, let's learn what this is.
Right.
And they do a very good job at trying to like make sure everyone has someone ish. I mean, they're always growing to have representation, and I mean they're doing it right now at least a little bit with the LGBT thing. I know they did a drag, like there's 3 really big drag queens who play Dead by Daylight like all the time, and they
like
did
Deer and Elix, and I can't remember the other one.
Yeah, but Deer and Elix are huge in it, and they all 3 of them got together and did a stream together. Like that's amazing. Like that's more representation and forethought than I've ever seen. And does it make sense to me that they're from Canada? 100%. when I think of these things, that's they're not an American company. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you're saying about community, I think that one of the great things about Twitch and Discord and these type of platforms, even Twitter, is that if you don't feel that your direct community, right? So like I play card games, right? So, the local game store is part of my community. If I don't think that my local game store is diverse, I can look for a queer Discord community for Magic. I can look for queer Magic streamers, right? And I can find that representation that may be lacking both in my immediate sphere, or I feel that's lacking in the game that I play. At least I know the people who play the game look like me. Because for people like me, and the differenceness is that, sometimes you get told that you can't be a nerd because you're black, right? That nerdery is sort of this not black thing. And so like having access, for example, I'm from Long Island, New York. I moved to Albany, New York for school, and I now live in Troy, which is a city right across the river, the Hudson. When I first moved here, I ran it. Somebody saw my Magic tattoo. I have a Magic tattoo. See?
Was that the Torment logo?
Nope, it's the Simic symbol.
Oh, I'm sorry. I came into Magic when the Torment block came out, so that dragon is like burned into my head.
Yeah, Omega knows what I'm talking about. But, I ran into somebody out and about in Troy, and they were like, hey, you play Magic, right? And I was like, how could they possibly know? And I'm like, oh, wait, the tattoo. And they invited me to a queer Discord that they had made of their friends and people that they had met through work and stuff for queer Magic players in the Capital District, which is, the Albany, Troy, Cohoes area.
Right.
And so, even though I didn't know a lot of queer Magic players all this time that I've lived in the Capital District, I now had access to this community of people who had shared experiences with me and also play my favorite game of my life, right? I've been playing Magic since '94, right?
Ooh.
So it's my longest standing fandom.
What was that, revised era? 94? Yeah, revised.
Yep. So I've been playing Magic for a hot minute, and it's cool that I now play Magic with a bunch of leftist liberals. Right? And we talk about Black Lives Matter, and we talked about protest techniques while we're playing Commander, right? That's my ideal fucking play group, right? Of people who not only share the game that you love, but they share other things that you like. That's how you build, I think, cohesive friendships and stronger communities. And that doesn't exist if you don't have platforms like Twitch, Parker's a streamer, or Discord, which I'm super into. I think that fills the hole of this representation problem that I'm talking about, is that at least the difference for me from 93, when I'm discovering my nerdery, my brother's sharing comic books with me. There's the, Power Rangers on TV. There's a really dope X-Men cartoon that came out. I didn't know that there were other black nerds. Now I don't have to worry about that, right? I can find other black Magic players. I can find other black people who are into anime. I can find other black people that play Magic, right? I can find other trans people that play Magic.
Right.
And I don't, even if my games don't represent me, I can find communities that represent me instead.
Yeah. I will say. Oh, go ahead, Callie.
I was gonna say I never in a million years thought I was gonna get this door opened for me to call out Mark Rosewater, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. Mark, you just released the new set. It's all about tribals and creatures and weird stuff like that, and you still didn't put any squirrels into the damn set. I still don't have my squirrel legend. I'm never gonna be able to make my squirrel commander deck. I hate you, Mark.
First of all, squirrels suck. And know that because
Shots fired.
Legend
Shots
set.
fired.
Callie, unicorns, the best tribe of all time. We have a legend.
Yeah.
What about y'all?
Oh.
Oh, you don't
Oh.
because you don't matter.
No.
Squirrel lives don't matter.
Ah!
Oh,
Wow.
you went there.
I've
I
run
thought you
squirrel
were-
decks.
I thought you were not part of the problem, but clearly you are.
I've been running
That
squirrel
was my
decks.
favorite problematic line from the movie that Will Smith was in when he was like, "Fairy lives don't matter." I was like, "This is so bad," but I'm about it kind
Yeah.
of secretly and not greatly.
Oh God, yeah, no, it's been one of those things where it's just like my secret pet peeve of Magic is I ran squirrel decks forever, and like Mark was like, I'm never putting another squirrel in the game, and for whatever reason he's stuck to that. For all the other promises he breaks every other month, not that one.
I'll send you as a peace offering. I'll send you a signed deranged hermit. How about that?
I'm all about that. I could go for a signed deranged hermit right now.
See, peace offerings.
Peace
I'm
offering.
about the I slap you, but then like I bring the hand back over to like pat you on the head.
The
you
olive
go.
branch is important, right?
Yeah.
So one more thing I kind of wanted to hit on, and you, I mean, it's a perfect segue talking about the community that you have on Twitch and the community that you have on Discord. I had mentioned it earlier, you know, I did not have a trans character that I could look towards for any kind of guidance really at any point. The first trans character I know of as a main character is coming out in a game by Dotenod later this year called Tell Me Why, which I cannot wait for. But
You're not excited for Cyberpunk, whatever.
okay, listen, they keep delaying it. I'm not convinced I'm ever going to get to play that one. So
It's been since 2012. Come on now.
yeah. So, but what I did have was Final Fantasy 14 and Final Fantasy 11. I had MMOs, which were a place that I could go and play a female character, and outside of the occasional lulz, do girls even play this game jokes, no one really questioned it when I presented as a woman in those games. And that was so powerful, if for nothing else, to be a bit of a playground to learn how to present as a woman. You know, you see like the little girls who they practice doing makeup, so they go around with like insane crazy makeup in their early teen years and stuff like that as they're still trying to learn. I didn't get to do that stage, but I had games like Final Fantasy 14 where I could be a woman and learn to be a woman. And I know games like MMOs can go such a long way in providing a little bit of diversity and a little bit of representation and allowing you to feel like yourself in a game.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out that Callie learned a lot about being a woman in Final Fantasy MMO from a previous episode where
Callie,
she
are you a thought
explained-
buddy in the game? Is that what it is?
No, what Chad's referring to is that I was a worker in a sex brothel online for many years.
Made real money.
I did.
Made real money.
I did. Well, so that wasn't when I was in Final Fantasy 14. That was back in
Okay.
college. That was just on a roleplay forum where
I'm
I
sorry.
happened to charge real money for roleplay. That was a great time. That was great money. Like, let me tell you, you
Sorry.
can make some serious cash doing that if you're a good role player. But I mean, you could then. I don't know if you can now. But
Are we? Wait, are we? Is this break TOS?
what?
Hey, it's not showing.
I feel like this might be closer to breaking TOS than the feet conversation from earlier.
Well, it's been we haven't been taken down when it originally aired, so
Yeah, I mentioned it on 2 episodes ago. I didn't can us for that one. So
yeah. So hopefully they don't come for us. But I will say, and for those people, because I want to throw this out there before it's even mentioned in the comments or anything, that not to say that Twitch or Discord or anything are perfect by any
course not.
stretch of the imagination, but it's good to see that there are communities out there. I know that women in particular struggle on streaming platforms, and I've talked to many women and why that is and how they kind of get pushed around by just kind of trolls who just want to essentially like flag them for no reason at all, and then you get so many flags and you're out, until they say that, oh yeah, what you did wasn't that bad. So again, it's not that we're not saying Twitch is perfect, but we want to at least acknowledge the things that they are trying to do. Just want to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, I just think that it's important, especially for a Pride episode, right, to talk about the fact, like we were talking about, like safe ways to come out, is that chosen family is like a big thing in the queer community. Yeah. And I think it's also super big in the gaming community of finding your tribe, right? You find your D&D group, you find your perfect Magic play group, right? As nerds, it's not so much about just finding, the cool nerd group. It's not just like finding out that you're super into, X-Men. It's finding, the cool X-Men fanfic community that you want to be a part of. It's not about, oh man, I love Magic the Gathering. It's about finding those 3 other people you play Commander with every week, right?
Yep.
And I think that that's true for queer people as well. I think it's super important to find your tribe and, build those bonds. I think that the world can be a pretty scary place. I think we're learning that pretty hardcore during COVID, and especially, with the civil unrest in the country. And I think having that great group of people that you can lean on, whether it's, hanging out in Parker's stream chat or, being in your Ken Main's Street Fighter Discord, right? That those are places that you can find that comfort. And I think it's something that I don't want to say, non-nerd people don't have access to. They probably have their book clubs or whatever. I don't know what boring non-gamers
what non-gamers do. I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. What their life like?
Sports or something. Like,
oh yeah.
HGTV.
but I think it's important to recognize that I think one of the benefits of being a nerd is this sort of ability to find, your Destiny raid group, to find your raid party in Final Fantasy 14, to find your full company, right?
Yep.
And I think that that's really great about being a gamer, both, GAMER and GAYMER, is that you can build these cool places that don't exist in the physical space, right? Where it's your own rules and it's your own social contracts. And I think that that's extremely valid and powerful.
It's wild when you think, like, I know people in Final Fantasy 11 and 14 who I do not know the real name of, but I would take a bullet for them. Like, yeah, that's just the kind of friendships you make.
I've got Magic Twitter folks that I've been friends with since 2014 that I've never met once.
Yep.
But when I almost was homeless, they dropped like $200 in my GoFundMe, right? Like, yep. the connections you make, digital or otherwise, they're important and valid. And I think some of the best friendships I have come from the nerd community, right? And I think that, also having the intersection of being queer is like another beautiful thing that you can have in the people you play games with.
All right. Well, I have taken way more of your time than I deserve. I apologize both to you, Parker, and to you, Amanda. Real quick, we want to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and what you got going on. Amanda, go ahead. You can go first.
Amanda, TN, as in Tracy Nicole, Stevens, STEVENS, and that's my Twitter. And then if you've seen Sage Gnosis in the chat, that's my everything else. So that's my YouTube, my Twitch. I don't really stream that much. I do an FGC talk show called The Neutral. I also do a podcast called Mute Your Mic, which is 3 queer women talking about intersections of gender, sexuality, and race in gaming spaces.
Ooh,
very cool.
I mean, all right. I think that's something that, I know the race thing's out of the question, but maybe Callie can give some things to that one right there.
Possibly. All right, Parker, where can we find you?
Yeah. I love. Let me just say, Amanda, I'm gonna have to follow you on a bunch of stuff because I'm loving everything that I've learned this stream. Honestly, the amount of education is insane. I'm just trying to be a sponge right now and just take everything in. But you can find me here on Twitch. It's just Guac on my sock. I'll put my name in chat there. I'm also Guac on my sock on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and then you can find my Discord server through my Twitch channel or Twitter or whatever. We're just an all-inclusive community. We try to have a lot of fun together. We play a lot of random games, variety streaming, and if you're into just meeting some new friends, come hang out. So
I will say you have the cutest emotes that like I love your
I
little
agree.
avocado emotes. They make me so happy.
Oh, I agree. I love my emotes. They're a lot of fun. So I'm glad that you complimented them, because I try to put a lot of time and work into making them exactly the way that I want them to be. So
Well, perfect. They're fantastic.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate having you along each and every week. Make sure you're back here next week when Norris will once again be sitting in. He'll be back running the show here. But we want to send a big appreciation out to Norris for stepping aside this week and letting myself and Chad kind of take the reins on a Pride LGBTQ episode. You know, we're a pretty small team at Checkpoint. There's only 5 of us who create content at this point, and you know, 40% of the team is LGBTQ, so this is a very important month for us. This is a very important time of year for us, and it's not going to end. I promised before we started the show today, actually, that some big stuff is coming in the month of July. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned. I'm not overselling it to say this is going to be the biggest month Checkpoint's ever had. You're not going to want to miss what's coming in July. Yeah. I promise you that.
It makes my stomach hurt a little bit, and both excitement and anxiety.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. So make sure you tune in for that. Make sure you head on over to our website. That's over at checkpointxp.com. Follow us on Twitter at checkpointxp and on Facebook at checkpointxp as well. And so for myself, Kelly Sloan, and for Chadd Callahan, have a good day, guys.